58 of Grace and Steel. I'm Kevin Steele.
And I'm Kevin Michael Grace.
This show, our topic is the return of politics. After the third and final presidential debate on October 19th, announcers on just about all stations covering the event noted with dismay that the candidates were not shaking hands with each other at the end of the evening, as opponents in previous years have done. And then the next night, at the 71st Al Smith dinner in New York, you could see in the reaction of the elite as they booed Donald Trump's speech, full of cutting remarks about Hillary Clinton, everyone seemed to realize a sea change was occurring. No longer, at the end of the day, are we, politicians, billionaires, millionaires, media folks, all palsy-walsy. There's an us against them setting up, and it's hardening fast. Kevin, on our podcast, you have predicted the return of politics. Is that what you're seeing here?
Absolutely. In fact, what we're seeing here is the bonfire of the Vanities.
Oh.
And by that, the Vanities being all the little compromises, which became big compromises. There was no politics and everyone agreed on everything, right?
Okay. Well, not on everything. There were little differences here and there, weren't there?
There were little pro forma differences. Bonfire of the Vanities is Donald Trump taking dead aim at all of the compromises of the elite. Oh, that we all agree with perpetual war, that we all agree with globalism, that we all agree that North Americans must have worse and worse lives so that billionaires can buy more ivory back scratchers. We all agree in that the media is in the pockets of the people who run things. And we all agree that, of course, the media stands for what's good. And what's good is what we have now, only more so and harder. And you could see in the discomfiture of the faces of the attendees at the Al Smith dinner and the actual booing that Donald Trump was getting, how much of a threat this is to them. In fact, if you look at some of the stills, and I put some up on my Twitter feed, you can just see how terribly discomfited, distressed or panicked the elite looked at that assemblage, wouldn't you say?
Well, yeah, that was the that one graphic that of that guy sitting right behind him. That's kind of what made me think, okay, this is the significant event of the week, not necessarily the debate. And, it was like, okay, they handed me my graphic for our podcast in that guy's face, or at least the difference between his laughing face and his wide-eyed expression moments later. So that's the moment that guy realized politics had returned.
Well, you see, the significance of it is that obviously in a debate, you're going to expect the two opponents to be having at each other hammer and tongs, right?
Yeah.
But the convention was when these people got together afterwards, that's just show. That's for the audience. We're all on the same page here, and Donald Trump is not on the same page as these people.
Yeah, that was what was different here. I mean, I'll be honest. I didn't even know about this Al Smith dinner until this year, right? It didn't register last election to me at all because, I pay, not as close attention to an American election as a Canadian election. But this year, all of a sudden, there's this Al Smith dinner, and it's significant. So this tells me that, yes, okay, we have politics returned because, we're not shaking hands and we're not all backslapping and going off to the bar and James Carville is marrying a Republican and et cetera, that kind of thing. So,
yeah, it's all about the yucks. Mm-hmm. And there were plenty of yucks at the Al Smith dinner, but they were painful yucks.
Mm-hmm. Because of this return. Well, is it because so much is at stake then? I mean, is that what the return of politics is? Is much more at stake?
Well, it's a dam that has been ready to burst for quite some time, and now it's bursting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the water level of the dam was much lower when the Cold War ended in the late 1980s, and the water pressure should have been dealt with then, but it wasn't. It's built up and up and up and up, and apparently it's not possible to relieve that pressure without the dam bursting.
So does the awakening of this, use this fellow behind Trump at the Al Smith dinner as an example, Is that awakening, that realization now hitting all of Hillary's supporters as well? They're going, hold it here. This is real, and maybe it's time for us to get real. They're playing like we've already won this thing, and, you guys can just go home because, politics will not return. We're going to put that away. This is what Hillary's playing.
As Steve Saylor has pointed out, the left or the Hillary campaign, it's a coalition of minorities. It's an attempt to make a majority out of minorities. Now, with so many of these people that support Hillary, they have a vested interest in her campaign because they get stuff from it directly.
Okay.
I don't know how many normal people there are who support Hillary. I mean, we've talked about this before. You look at her rallies, and there are not very many people. You would think that, since the media has said she's going to be president, this will be the last time that ordinary people will be able to get so close to her that they'd be excited by this. But they're not. And I'm reminded, I was rewatching Armando Iannucci's Veep just before we started. And the Veep is Selena Meyer is bemoaning what she stands for, whether she stands for anything. And I think that there's really a lot of Hillary in her character because she's talking about losing the women. And she says, well, if I lose women, what am I? An optimistic warmonger who likes gays?
Well, that's Hillary's problem right now, but that's why I was asking about the awakening of Hillary supporters through this realization that politics have returned. We have, I must confess, I've been trolling these last couple of weeks a little bit, dabbled in it, had a good time. And so I've been looking at the comments of people that have been supporting Hillary quite a bit. And there appears to be some kind of awakening on that side as well. So I don't know whether this is going to manifest itself in greater attendance at her rallies or greater participation on the internet. I'm not sure, but despite them saying they're walking away with it, there appears to be some concern. So, I mean,
there's certainly concern at the high end.
Yeah,
because I'm going to have to blow my own horn here, which is not my want, but I suppose I should make it so. That I have predicted in this space that Donald Trump was going to follow the lead of Theodore Roosevelt, and William Howard Taft, and be a trust buster. And he made it explicit last week that he would not allow the merger of AT&T and Time Warner. And their stocks fell on this news. Hillary's peak supporters, they know, her 1% supporters, they know what's at stake here. What's at stake is the loss of their hegemony.
Right.
The loss of them saying that, we're just going to merge and merge and merge and merge in every big industry so that effectively there's a monopoly and there's nothing you can do about it because we've told you that there's nothing you can do about it. Because, politics doesn't exist. There's no one standing on the other side of this issue. Well, now there is.
Well, yeah, I did see sort of, I guess it was trouble in the narrative there when I would see headlines side by side, with Hillary's walking away with this double-digit lead. And the next story under that was this Moskowitz or whatever his name was, founder of Facebook, was decided to kick in extra millions into the campaign because, he wanted to ensure. Well, if Hillary's walking away with it, why would you want to kick in millions into the campaign?
You ever heard of the expression more money than sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of course, Marcus Facebook famously gave, $100 million to the school board of Newark, New Jersey?
Right, yeah.
And he would have been better off burning it because then you might have been able to get some heat and energy out of those piles of money.
Well, the point being, if she's walking away with it, why is this guy, chucking in money, right? It doesn't make any sense. They must need the money because they feel they don't have this thing in the bag. That's all.
Sure. But that's real sincerity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Follow the money.
Is this going to cost me another $10 million or something? I don't know. How much did he give?
think it was another 15. That
15.
Yeah, that's what it.
Well, that's a substantial amount of money to pretty much anybody.
That would pay for a lot of protesters.
Except for, the 1% of the 1%, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose. But you've been a watcher of elections, American elections, for a long time. We're coming down to the last 2 weeks here, coming down to the wire. How does politics play out in the last 2 weeks in this unique election? I mean, does it play out the same way it always did? It's always the same type of fight, regardless of what's at stake? Or
No, I think this is very much different. Because, you'd have to go back to Goldwater in 1964, and I think that Goldwater, for external reasons, didn't have a chance. William Buckley talked about this in one of his books, that it would have, to elect Goldwater would have meant that America would have had 3 presidents in a little more than a year, which is not something that you want. I guess, Jimmy Carter did it. In 76, that was 2.5 years, roughly. But too much uncertainty there, too much change in disruption in Goldwater winning in 1964. I mentioned Goldwater because he represented a choice, not an echo, in the famous phrase of Phyllis Schlafly.
Well, I thought the politics ended in 45 and didn't return until now. So are you saying that Goldwater represented a return of politics that was dismissed?
Well, no, he represented a minor return of politics. He was on board with Johnson on the Vietnam War, and supported him to the end on that, despite their differences. It's more profound with Trump, obviously, but the country is so much more different than it was in 1964. In 1964, it was perfectly possible and legitimate to believe that we're all in this together. You would have to be ignorant or corrupt to believe that now.
Okay. All right. So, but again, how does it manifest itself now? Does politics change the last 2 weeks of the election? I'm just looking at the short term here.
No, I'm talking about the enthusiasm gap.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Because Trump's voters are motivated to vote far more so than Hillary's voters, because Hillary is offering the same. Now, except to, the 1% and the aspirational, this is life and death for them. For the others who would normally vote Democrat, it's not life and death. Whereas with Trump's supporters, believe that he can actually make a difference for the better.
Okay.
And, the closer, we may have passed the point of no return in this regard. That Trump had a problem from the moment that he announced his campaign, which was, this guy's a clown, not a real politician, can't win. The longer he stayed in the race, if he maintained a relative balance in the polls with Hillary, which he has maintained to this date, that means that he becomes real as a presidential option, not just a protest vote.
Okay. Does that switch any voters over to
I think it does switch voters.
Okay.
Because a large part of the electorate always wants to back a winner and doesn't want to be caught backing a loser. Particularly, if you look at, say, Reagan versus Carter in 1980, my guess would be it's sort of the reverse Woodstock effect. There were 250,000 people at Woodstock or whatever, and afterwards it seemed like 5 or 10 million people claimed to have been there, right? With Jimmy Carter, my guess would be half or a quarter of the people who voted for him would now admit it.
Okay.
But with Trump, what you're seeing is these people who have been on the fence are going to move to him.
Okay.
Because it seems like Trump is playing 2 things at once. He is a political candidate, and he is not an independent candidate. He's a candidate of one of the 2 great American parties, the Republican Party, but he also represents a movement, and movements are far more exciting and motivating than political parties are. You see that with the Reform Party in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
You saw the enthusiasm of reform supporters versus supporters of the Liberals, Conservatives, NDP.
Right, yeah. Well, of course, I'm a little bit removed from the Trump rallies. I see whatever they show us on camera. And I did read one interesting account on NPC. There was a guy that attended a rally, and he found it all very wonderful and lots of camaraderie and that kind of thing. So, I mean, it sounds like a lot of fun they're having there. And
yeah, but did you notice that he was keen to point out, with regard to the attendees of the rally, how young, female, and normal-looking attendees were?
Mm-hmm.
This is crucial. Right.
Well, what they were indicating, at least, in subsequent comments, was that, this is the great, silent majority, that's been suppressed through all this political correctness. And now they're coming out into the light. And we're going to see a lot more normies at the polls.
I think it's a little different from the silent majority.
Mm-hmm.
Because the phrase the silent majority, it makes it clear that these people, according to Nixon and Agnew and Pat Buchanan, they were in the majority, but they had been silenced.
Mm-hmm.
What we're dealing with now is much worse than that. These people have been actively repressed. These people have been, a great many of them, have been afraid to admit to themselves what they actually think about America and the course that it is on.
All right, so they're not enduring a bonfire of the vanities then. They're the ones that, I guess, would be the ones standing around warming their hands on it.
They're heaping the coals.
Right. Yeah, standing around roasting the marshmallows.
Have you ever heard of people booing the media before?
Yes, I have.
Chanting CNN sucks?
Yeah, I've never seen it sustained for so long. I guess that's one thing that should be pointed out. And they're making a big deal of this Lugenpress slur now as well.
The lying press from the German.
Yeah.
In the 60s, there was a slogan, impeach Earl Warren. He was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
Right, yeah.
Brown versus Board of Education, banning school prayer, etc. This was thought to be a fringe enthusiasm. Jail Hillary is not a fringe enthusiasm.
Well, here, let's get you on the record there. Let's look post-election. Assuming a Trump victory, does he prosecute Hillary? I mean, that's politics. That's real politics then, right? He goes after her and does what he says.
No, I don't think that will happen, because I believe firmly that Obama will give her a preemptive and complete pardon, as Gerald Ford did Nixon.
Okay. So not because Trump doesn't want to do it.
I'll just explain that a little bit. Did you see that story about Obama using a pseudonym while exchanging emails with Hillary?
Right, yep, I did.
What the hell's up with that, huh? That kind of suggests that he was in on the server, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody believes that he was, outside of that knowledge.
He claimed not to know of it.
Yes, I know. But he's also involved, deeply involved in this pack as well that O'Keefe is exposing. So,
well, we'll get to that in just a minute.
Yeah.
But I'll just explain that I am in no doubt that Hillary's in a position to say to Obama that you are going to give me a pardon, because we're going to hang together or hang separately. Because if I have nothing to lose, then you're going down with me. Of course, as I joked a week or so ago, this could lead to Hillary having a fatal accident with a pillow.
Yeah, it's kind of a dangerous maneuver, right? Throwing threats like that back and forth.
It's someone who would still be the president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And, if Hillary were to die suddenly, would we be surprised? We know how wretched her health is.
That's right.
And it's a commonplace after a great failed endeavor, such as losing this election, for her to just give up the ghost, right?
Choked on a drone.
What do I have to live for?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know whether she's that type, but yeah.
No,
okay.
I don't mean suicide.
Oh, yeah.
I just mean an internal assent to the idea of life being meaningless and pointless.
Okay, right.
This happens.
The devil comes up behind.
This happens to a lot of old people.
Right.
One day they wake up and it sort of hits them. Why am I struggling to stay alive? Really? Why am I doing that? I'm not going to do that anymore.
Right. Okay.
And then they fade very quickly.
All right. Well, let's go back to our theme here. Bonfire, the Vanities. We're looking at Trump's peers are booing him in New York. What does he do that in the first 100 days that upsets him? We saw this Gettysburg Address that he gave, which is talking about the actions that he's going to take right away. Does he hit the ground running?
Sure he hits the ground running.
Mm-hmm.
For two reasons. One, because you want to hit them when they're at their weakest. And two, and it would be difficult for Trump to resist this, that anyone who's actually served in government will tell you that if you want to make big changes, you have to get them done in the first 12 or 18 months of the administration. It's too late after that because you become obsessed with then becoming reelected and you stop doing controversial things.
Okay.
But there's the Machiavellian aspect to the first reason, which is you start metaphorically whacking people. You get the people out of the way, the worst people out of the way. And as Machiavelli explained, that if you do this properly, which is to say that you go big and you do it all at once, that the result is those people who aren't whacked become your friends, genuinely, because they realize that you could have eliminated them, but you didn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but we're going to be looking at, if we're looking at the return of politics for the first time since the war, we're looking at, I guess, a transition period here that will be unprecedented as well. So, assuming again a Trump victory, we've got the Hillary pardon stuffed in there. Does Obama take any other preventative measures on behalf of Wall Street, etc.? I mean, he's got all his pardons, I suppose. That's one method of defense, but
if he were looking for revenge against Trump, I suppose he could talk to Janet Yellen and to arrange to crash the economy immediately after Trump becomes president,
mm-hmm.
which she could easily do.
Right.
All she has to do is to jack up interest rates, and the stock market just I don't even want to think about how hard the fall would be.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that gets pinned on Trump because, of course, that's just the way it goes. But, I mean, it would be like the Brexit thing, I guess. People would start to see manipulation in it. And, this is unprecedented stuff.
His return of politics means that everything becomes politicized. I mean, everything is said to be political now, personal being the political. But, in a more immediate and heartfelt sense. One of the things that I would expect Trump to do is to use the bully pulpit. Every president says that he's going to use the bully pulpit. But I'm expecting opposition from Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, right?
Right.
And I would expect Trump to light a fire under them, specifically going to their hometowns and holding huge rallies with howling normies demanding that these people get on the Trump train.
Well, that's certainly exciting.
Well,
it's a continuation of the election, and basically is what.
Yes, exactly. The election never stops. Now, you saw that with Tony Blair and Bill Clinton, this idea of the permanent election, right?
Right.
But this permanent election, it was manifested in, what they call micro policies, right?
Okay.
Oh, we're going to jack up the price of, cigarettes. That sort of thing. We're going to take all these little measures to show people that government works, right?
Okay.
Adam Curtis goes into this in great detail in one of his documentaries. Oh, we're going to make the health system work by employing greeters at hospital doors. So we're going to cut those. You wanted wait times cut down? We've cut down the wait times, right?
Okay.
The stuff that Trump was talking about. Now, these delays on government employees going into PR work, that's devastating to the political class. And this business of former White House officials working for foreign governments, that's like a death blow to that class.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this would only work if, for instance, AIPAC was reclassified as a group advocating for a foreign country, to wit, Israel, But you have all these politicians, working for Turkey and all these other countries. They don't advertise this too much, right?
Right, yeah.
But these things come up all the time. Like, why is this even an issue? Well, it's an issue because a foreign country wants something, so they hire the best whores in Washington to make it a thing. And these people are paid very well indeed.
Yes, most famously, Henry Kissinger, hired by the Chinese throughout the 90s when all the manufacturing started traipsing over to China.
Wasn't there also a Jack Abramoff?
Yeah.
Remember him? There was a movie made about him with Kevin Spacey.
Yeah. It's not coming to mind right now, though. The name rings a bell. Of him doing something nasty and illegal. Now, of course, Kissinger was never called onto the carpet for all his lobbying for China. But he was one of the early guys played by the Chinese to lobby for him throughout the late 80s and early 90s. I remember that when I was doing all my research on lobbying on behalf of the
here's an example from Wikipedia. Jack Abramoff and his law firm were paid at least $6.7 million by the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands from 1995 to 2001, which made manufactured goods with Made in the USA label, but not subject to U.S. labor and minimum wage laws.
Okay.
This is just commonplace. That you think that you don't understand that your politicians are not, or your ex-politicians, the people who matter, the people who have the ear of the politicians, they're not working for you. They're working for foreigners, and they're being well compensated for it.
Right. And so any change to that particular gravy train, I think, is going to take out an entire class of people out of the gene pool in Washington.
Well, yeah. I mean, you look at these people who've been in Washington, or Ottawa for that matter, for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. What good are they after they leave politics? What have they spent their time doing? Yelling at their male staffers and sleeping with their female staffers? The only thing that they have to sell is influence. And if they can't do that anymore, well, that's a problem.
True. They can get into polling, but I was going to raise this question, actually, because, I mean, we had talked, I think in the spring, early spring, when we were talking about all the trimmers that show up after an election. In particular, this is what you saw with the Reagan election in 1980, that all these trimmers headed to Washington. And at another time, you had mentioned that Trump is going to need some of the trimmers. Well, have politics been brought in with such force now, taking into account the Al Smith dinner and the things that have been said? Do the trimmers even bother showing up? Are they going to be there after an election if Trump wins?
Well, they're always going to show up.
Okay.
The question is what kind of reception they're going to get. There's a big difference between a Trump administration and the Reagan administration. Because this idea, in 1981, when Reagan became president, well, the government has taken a wrong turn, but the government is fundamentally on our side. We just have to make some adjustments. That isn't the idea now.
Okay.
But the idea is that the government is fundamentally corrupt and is working against the people and not for the people. So it should be easier to identify the hypocrites and the obviously insincere in any Trump administration.
Well, they're doing a fine job of identifying themselves with a little help, of course, from WikiLeaks on the way out the door, I guess. This is something.
Oh, sure, but we haven't needed WikiLeaks to look at what's gone on with the right.
Mm-hmm.
That these people have been, these rhinos, cucks, have been self-deporting from the Republican Party. They've declared war on the Republican Party since Trump is at the head of the ticket. And Hillary has to win, or their influence is gone forever.
Okay. What about places like Fox News? I mean, they've been playing both sides of the fence there. Hannity, of course, has famously been on the Trump train and working his butt off. But the rest of the station, Megyn Kelly had famously the big bitch out with Trump, and then supposedly redeems herself when she interviews Donna Brazile. Where do these people land?
Well, no, I mean, the more cleverer among them will have seen the way things are going, and they started to crawl back.
Yeah, but when you phony polls, it's hard to say.
Let's look at Fox, okay?
Yeah.
Let's look at Fox. Let's look at what Rupert Murdoch owns. Television, movies, publishing. This guy is a prime candidate to be trust busted.
So does Trump leave him alone then if he switches sides and whips Megyn Kelly into line and all of a sudden everybody is pushing Trump the last 2 weeks? Is that enough for him to betray his trust-busting instincts?
I don't think so. I mean, in any event, bills of attainder are illegal under the Constitution. He couldn't punish all the media giants except Fox. Mm-hmm. If he were going to punish the media giants, well, Fox would have to be one of them. But of course, the reason that these people hire lobbyists is to prevent that very sort of thing. Right.
So I'm simply saying, that if Trump is politics, then these people cannot be saved in the last 2 weeks by,
I don't think
behind.
they can. But, let's say that you have a murder trial and there's 3 men who are convicted of a murder right up to the gallows. Each of these guys is thinking, yeah, they're going to nail the other 2, but not me. Not me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so is Donna Brazile pardon in the works as well? I mean, if we're going to look at what happens after the election, is it a huge pardoning of all the DNC up top, or does he let any of that go down to satisfy the bloodlust of the people?
Well, you see, it's a win-win for Trump. Because to go back to Ford and Nixon and Carter, that it is widely believed that it was Ford's pardon of Nixon that cost him the 76 election. To the extent that if Hillary is pardoned, this is going to put a big black mark on the Democratic Party. If others besides Hillary are pardoned, the black mark gets bigger and more pestilent.
Fair enough.
So either they get thrown to the wolves in court, or they get pardoned and the Democratic Party and its vast apparatus is sacrificed instead.
Well, that's something to consider. I suppose what happens in the event of a Trump victory to the Democratic Party, I mean, the party itself, it does shed a lot of this, I can see it shedding a lot of the Clintonian influence, which has not been particularly healthy, I suppose. I mean, it's a bonfire of the Democrats, and is it a cleansing bonfire? I don't know. Do they stay?
Yeah, but you say Clintonian. Obama has run the White House like a criminal gang, perhaps even more so than Clinton did. Let's look at this Donna Brazile character. The black lesbian with the purple hair.
Right.
Now, she has a psych degree from Louisiana State University. And this is the exact words that she said to Megyn Kelly. You're like a thief that want to bring into the night the things you found that was in his gutter. Now, maybe she isn't a moron. She only sounds like a moron. But this woman has taught at the University of Maryland, I'm going in ascending order, Georgetown, and Harvard. Now, why do you think that a woman who talks like that would get those kinds of posts? Because I'll answer my own question, because they're all in it together.
Because they're all in it together?
Yeah.
See, I could have answered it. Okay, fair enough.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
I'm just saying. Okay, are you saying that she's pretending? She's not pretending to be a doorknob, then, is what you're saying. Okay. So
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if her back is against the wall, she's probably going to play the race card, I assume.
Well, I'll interrupt to say that Kim Campbell, who was Prime Minister of Canada for a short period in the 1990s, led the Conservative Party to the greatest debacle in Western political history. Mm-hmm. She ended up with an appointment to the Kennedy School. because the elite, I mean, it wasn't a long appointment, but the elite always looks after its own.
Well, there's going to be lots of appointments if Trump wins, because there's going to be lots of unemployed people, I suppose. They will have to look after their own. There's going to be a lot of strange welfare appointments to the UN, presumably.
There's only so many of those jobs to go around.
Mm.
And I won't say jockeying for those jobs. I'll just say the battle to the death
right.
for those jobs will be wondrous to behold.
Right. Well, let's just back up a minute and take away our presumption of a Trump victory. And one word we haven't used very much so far in the first half hour here of this podcast is rigged. This is something that actually more and more people are talking about, especially when they're talking about machines in 16 states that are connected to George Soros through this Malik Brown UN character, which I actually have a little story to tell. I earlier in the podcast many months ago talked about my interview with Maurice Strong. It was actually Malik Brown that was on the phone to him as I was leaving the room. It was rather interesting. They were talking. He took the call just as I was packing up, and they were discussing who to appoint as the head of the UN, as a successor to Kofi Annan. I thought that was kind of interesting. Anyways, that's my Malik Brown story. He was heavily connected with Maurice
Strong. So he's
Strong.
juiced. He's juiced, as they say.
Oh, he is. He's been right. He's one of these Maurice Strong characters playing in the background all the time. To see him connected to a firm that owns machines, there is no other reason for him to be connected to a firm that owns voting machines other than to rig the vote, as far as I'm concerned. There you go. As you know, he's not the kind of guy that does that kind of business. Oh, maybe I'm just going to get involved in toaster ovens or something like that, voting machines. Nasty. This would have been a result of the 2000 election. It was after that they decided they needed to get into that Stalinistic position of counting the votes, right?
Well, I would say that there's two reasons for Trump to bring up the possibility of the election being rigged.
Mm.
The first one is to put the Democrats on notice that they are being watched and that his people are going to do everything they can to stop it while it is going on or to attempt to overturn it if it is significant and affects the election results.
Mm.
The second reason to do this is to inspire his supporters.
Okay.
The old joke of every vote counts. Well, people know that every vote doesn't, in fact, count. But when people do think that their vote counts, and more important, that their vote is needed, they are much more likely to actually go to the polls.
Right. Okay. Well, there's a lot of inspiration, in that rigged election talk for that. I mean, everybody is pretty fired about it, but it's not concern that is unfounded. That's all I'm saying, right?
It's a commonplace.
Mm-hmm.
Every presidential election that Republican heavy hitters, well before that bad man Trump took over the party, when the cucks were in charge,
right? Yeah,
that the cucks admitted that you could count on 2 to 3% stealing of votes or fraudulent voting in a presidential election.
Right. Yeah. I do recall, just another anecdote from me about my journalistic career back after the 2000 American presidential election, pitching a story to my editor with the headline, "How to Rig a Canadian Election." That actually never went anywhere. I kept pitching it for about 6 months. He kept killing it every time. Did
he say that it was not helpful?
Basically, that was the idea. You would be branded a crazy person, is what he indicated or said directly to me. Well, wouldn't be good for us, and wouldn't be good for you.
As I said directly after the last debate, that every honest man must agree that to reflexively accept the results of any election, regardless of circumstances, is an open invitation to fraud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Trust but verify, as Ronald Reagan famously said.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, there is a there's a specific problem involved with rigging. This isn't just a theoretical matter. It's a practical matter. That ideally, you want to steal enough votes or to create enough fraudulent votes to just come in over the top. 51-49, 52-48.
Yeah.
The more you rig it, the more likely it seems that it's been rigged.
Yeah.
Which leads to the possibility that you rig an election, but you don't rig it enough and you lose anyway.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you recall from the Vanities video, I mean, they were talking about hiring a bunch of people to drive around in their own cars from place to vote. I don't know how practical an idea that is for rigging elections. Yeah, I mean, you have to create 100,000 nomads that go crazy on that day and just drive all over the place. I mean, is that a practical method to rig an election?
You never heard of the expression vote early and often?
Yes, I have, and the whole idea of the bus kind of makes sense. You're bringing the bus of immigrants that barely speak English and you drive them from pole to pole. And
exactly. You take a bunch of Somalis, say in Minnesota or Maine, and you promise them things or you threaten them. You put them on a bus or, in a bunch of vans or whatever, and they show up at polling places and no one can understand them anyway. And they attest to be living in this polling district and they vote and vote and vote and vote again.
Okay.
It is possible. I do believe it is done and it does work.
Well, that's what that Scott Folville said. We've been doing this for 50 years and we're not going to stop now. We're going to keep bussing them around. It's just a matter of, how we're going to do it so we don't get caught. So.
Well, famously, one of the payoffs, one of the ways that rigging is accomplished is through the use of what's called walking around money.
Mm-hmm.
That the Democrats give money to black preachers who hold fish fries and things like this. And the idea is, we fed you, now you're going to do something for us. Now, Republican operative, I think it might have been Ed Rollins, admitted that to the extent that they were involved in the suppression of the vote, it wasn't really suppression. They just paid these black preachers more money than the Democrats so that they wouldn't engage in these walking around exploits.
Okay. No fish fry. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I guess it's to be assumed that both sides do this to some degree, but we're not seeing a response to the Vanities videos, We're only seeing out of the Clinton campaign, we're nasty women and we're not going to stand for this. Or, Don's been groping women for 30 years and now, it's all being exposed in the last month before the election. That appears to be the only thing we're getting out of him. We're not, or out of the Clinton campaign. We're not getting a tit for tat on the broad accusations that are coming out of the Trump campaign.
They're terrible at this. This Robbie Mook fellow.
Oh, yeah.
The people who work for him are just terrible at this. This nasty woman slogan is dreadful for all sorts of reasons. I mean, this idea, nasty girl, that appeals to a certain demographic, right? It doesn't appeal to a broad demographic. And to use the word in its literal sense, to associate Hillary and the Democrats with the idea of nastiness, the result is going to be that amongst a fairly large number of voters, those who are, let's say, mildly sympathetic to Hillary or on the fence, they hear this often enough and they begin to think, perhaps just subconsciously, Hillary Clinton, she really is a nasty woman, isn't she?
Well, that was my best troll. I think I sent you an email highlighting that. My best troll was on that very point where they were plugging it the night of the debate. There's going to be a T-shirt with nasty woman. And I got on to reply to the Teen Vogue with that and told them, Michael Moore said that he hopes that Hillary Clinton killed Vince Foster. That's badass. And that should be on the back of the T-shirt. And that was my best troll of the evening. So
well, when
it's fun.
When the Trump supporters adopted this word deplorable to refer to themselves, The Trump people are supposed to be the rebels.
Mm-hmm.
Hillary's people are not supposed to be the rebels. Now, why don't you tell our listeners about Donald Duck?
Oh, yeah. It's the Veritas video number 3. This was the plot to publicize with Donald Duck in costume to tag the Donald Trump campaign, followed around the country, holding up signs saying, Donald Duck, release your taxes, right? In the video, it's shown to come from Hillary Clinton herself. And they were going to go with an Uncle Sam campaign, but she said through her intermediaries that she wanted this Donald Duck campaign. So, I mean, what they've done is established a direct connection between the Clinton campaign, the DNC, and this Americans for United for Change.
PAC.
It's a PAC that...
and thus contact between that PAC and the Hillary campaign would be...
illegal.
Yes,
but more importantly, in the first 2 videos, they established that this PAC was responsible for the violence, particularly at the Trump rally that was canceled in Chicago. They were the instigators for that. The violence ended up getting blamed on Trump supporters and Bernie supporters. And now it was revealed, of course, that it was caused by the paid Clinton operatives. So they didn't tie the Clinton campaign to the violence of that particular event, but they tied the 2 organizations together. So it's looking pretty bad right now. The whole Donald Duck thing was lame as all get out.
Well, I wanted to explain just how lame it is. And, how bad these Hillary people and people on the left are at memes. Now, this came up on Veep when Mike, the press secretary, had acted very cowardly after there was a physical threat, that he ducked behind the podium in the press room. That the next time they got together, there were a couple of smartasses with duck calls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that works. Donald Duck doesn't work because Donald Duck, everyone knows who Donald Duck is, and Donald Duck doesn't quack like a duck. He speaks in a voice that everyone recognized. So you introduce this idea of Donald Duck, and someone says, I don't get it. Well, Donald Duck. Hey, I know what a duck is. No, not Donald Duck, Donald Duck.
Right.
The cartoon character? Yeah, when you have to go into several generations of explanation for your meme, it means it's a failure.
I know. So this one, it obviously tanked as well, but the cute part is, of course, they are tied directly now illegally to the Clinton campaign. And some are speculating as we speak right now on Twitter that this was the reason for Hillary denying any connection when the violence was brought out, because they knew that of what O'Keefe had. Now, I don't know what O'Keefe has, and he did at the end of this video promise that there was more coming, so he may be just ramping it up here. I'm hoping so.
Well, I wanted to say a little more about Hillary and how bad her people are. This is the avatar description of her at her official Twitter site. Wife, mom, grandma, women and kids advocate, FLOTUS senator, sex state, hair icon, pantsuit aficionado, 2016 presidential candidate. This is a style which became popular just a few years ago. Now, we pay attention to Hillary Clinton because she's running for president of the United States. So, yeah, she is a wife, mom, grandma, blah, blah, blah. That goes after the part about her running for president. I'm just an ordinary person, wife, mom, grandma, and hair icon, pantsuit aficionado. This stuff now seems intolerable. We are moving out of that millennial snark and the millennial winking into a more serious age. Hair icon, try again, lady. Look, image management people know, and they tell women in business and politics to pick a hairstyle and stick with it, and a hair color and stick with it. Because if you're constantly changing your hair color and your hairstyle, this is impressing people that you are not a serious person. oh, but men get to do it. No, they don't. No, they do not. And I'll mention again that Preston Manning went through hell after his adjustments to his physical appearance when he was Reform Party leader.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another example. This just excruciating video that Hillary did earlier this year, where they showed those things you put around your beer can to protect the beer from getting warm and it burning your hand, right?
Right, yeah.
It said chillery, am I right? And then there was a little video of Hillary coming out saying, yeah, I'm just chilling or chillaxing or whatever. And I'm thinking, just stop it, lady. Stop it.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, these people are terrible.
Well, okay, yeah, I'm going to focus in on one thing you said there. We're getting into a more serious age. Well, is that because of the return of politics? Can you put those two together?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we are entering a more serious age, and you're claiming that Hillary is not with with this change. She's not down with this change yet. Playing catch up.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know the thick of it. We've talked about it on our podcast many times. That there was this great episode near the beginning where they needed to come up with a policy for Hugh, the minister, right?
Right.
And so there was this debate about whether they should crack down on the criminal youths, right? On the yabos, or whether they should be nice to them. And, you know, we could do one or the other. And so they go to Terry, the civil servant there, and what do you think? And she said, well, it's like apples and oranges. Well, which do you pick, apples and oranges? And she's just disgusted with these two men. And she says apples or oranges, doesn't matter. Well, what does that mean? Does it mean nice to the yabos or crack down on the yabos? This is an example of how unserious politics became and how politics vanished, that people could seriously discuss, you know, whether to take the opposite sides of an important issue. It came up in Veep, also Armando Iannucci, where Dan says, look, I love abortion. I'm a abortionado, right? But I would turn pro-life in an instant if that meant we'd win.
And those days are done, you're saying?
I think they're done. I hope they're done.
Even if
we seem
wins?
To have evidence.
Mm-hmm. If Hillary wins, ascends to the White House, is it over? Or do we revert back to business as usual?
No, it's not going to be a reversion back to business as usual, because people have discovered that it is now possible to speak as if politics existed.
Okay. But then how do the Democrats practice politics? We're calling it a bonfire of the vanities.
Well, I think that they might have to, in their years in exile, they might have to do a little thinking about whether they want to exist, and if so, what they stand for.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because talking about, as Hillary does, everyone should have a good job. Yeah, but you support globalism, which is determined to make everyone have a shitty job, except the 1% and the aspirational class, which is desperate to join it.
Well, if the Democrats in exile have to do that soul searching and thinking of what they stand for, I would suggest that the Republicans do as well. Because, you know, there's so many of them are opposed to Trump, they're going to have to craft a platform that I guess isn't this globalist platform identical to the Democrats, unless there's a wholesale realignment.
It's a capture of the party if Trump wins. I mean, the Democrats didn't recognize it. For years after Roosevelt became president in 1933, people like the Vice President John Nance Garner, they fought against the idea that the man at the head of the ticket, the president, owned the party, but Roosevelt won that battle, and he won it pretty easily. I mean, this is the rule in Western parties now. I mean, there's no Liberal Party in Canada. There's the Justin Trudeau Party. There was no Conservative Party in Canada. There was the Stephen Harper Party. After that, well, they don't know what they are until they get their leader. We had the Tony Blair Party, the Gordon Brown Party, and the David Cameron Party in Britain. I I mean,
does that continue after politics?
You could be right in that this could lead to a recrudescence of political parties being powerful. But these people in the Republican Party are just going to be totally gobsmacked and helpless after Trump's victory.
Okay. But that's not going to last forever. I mean, there has to be some kind of reformation, doesn't there? It's either a dissolution or reformation. Or do they just hang tight and wait it out for 8 years and then let's all agree to return to no politics again?
After Roosevelt's first victory in 1932, the Republican Party dedicated itself to anti-Rooseveltism, which led to 20 years in the wilderness. 20 years.
Okay. So what are they going to do?
This idea that we're going to roll back the New Deal. Well, as it turned out, America didn't want the New Deal rolled back and wasn't particularly fond of politicians who promised that they were going to roll back the New Deal.
Okay. So the example translated to the presidency now is that they're going to dedicate themselves to fighting Trumpism, and
that would be my guess. But
okay.
I mean, they've been in charge for 50, 60 years, these people, and yet they pose as the beleaguered remnants of a shattered army, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, these hysterical attacks, this identity politics, you may have seen some of these stories with the one in the foreword that, what do I tell my Mexican-American daughter about Donald Trump? Oh, you're Mexican-American daughter. You're Jewish, aren't you? So, I mean, and why is she Mexican-American? Isn't she just like American? This idea that these people have to feel persecuted, and they have undergone no persecution. We'll see how they feel when they actually experience genuine persecution.
Oh, okay. Who gets to do the persecuting?
The winners get to do the persecuting.
Okay. All right. Do you hear that, gang? You get a troll using your real names.
Well, look at Reagan. Look at Reagan. He was a nice guy, and he was a distant guy. And he didn't want to be mean to people, which is an error when you're dealing with bad people.
Yeah,
but he could have cleaned out the government to a much greater extent than he did, but it just wasn't in his nature. These savage attacks on him, with a few exceptions, he took them very well. Trump is a much more atavistic person. We have become over-refined, and we need more atavism.
Well, I don't recall Reagan ever promising to drain the swamp. Do you? I don't.
That's a metaphor that works.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a pretty good hashtag, too. But, that's a lot of powerful careers on the line, especially when
Build the wall. You have to go back. Make America great again. Those are good slogans.
I'm with her. Yeah, it does sound kind of lame, eh? It's right. It's like writing lyrics without, with only referring to abstract ideas no images.
It appeals to this notion that Hillary is some sort of underdog in this. Also, stronger together. You already run everything.
Yeah. No, it occurred to me actually as I was babbling there that, in music writing, when they talk in songwriting, you'll often hear this at seminars or whatever. They say, you have to make your lyrics about something. You have to put images in there. You just can't talk about abstract ideas because those don't work. And all of Hillary's slogans are all abstract, and Donald's all contain images. You just rattled off them: build the wall, drain the swamp, that kind of thing. Make America great again is about the most vague one that he's got, right?
Well, no, I think that you're right about political slogans as far as songwriting. I don't know. Well, Sandy Pearlman, who ran the Blue Oyster Cult, was definitely of the opinion that the best lyrics were ones that you could never figure out in the first couple of listenings, because it made you listen harder to the songs.
Well, I'm just going by what these guys who get paid a few $100 to go to conduct these seminars say, right? They're always saying, images, you don't want to talk about feelings and abstract stuff all the time, right? So it's just, when you talked about build the wall and then you say I'm with her, well, I'm with her doesn't mean much, but build the wall. Well, there's a wall. Imagine a wall. I can make a cartoon.
Yeah,
I can make a cartoon of a wall. I can't make a cartoon of I'm with her other than.
Yeah, we'll see how many people are with her when she is threatened with prison.
Well, there may be a lot going with her unless Obama gets busy and pardons quite a few. But we shall see on that at as we like to say here at Grace and Steel, and then regret it later. Anyways, I think we're going to call an end to episode 58 of Grace and Steel this time. I'm Kevin Steele.
And I'm Kevin and Michael Grace.